Kia ora koutou. Hello, Aotearoa. I'm Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, and this is COVID-19
Hello and welcome to PostingCast. My name is John. My pronouns are he and him.
Kia ora everyone, my name's Ross. My pronouns are he or they.
We didn't agree on an order for this, so I'll go first, I guess. Hi, I'm August, your Ototahi posting correspondent. He, him pronouns.
Kia ora, it's Artie. I use he, him, and you might know me as Granny Memes on Twitter.
I'm Ashley, she, her, and I'm from Pornick. Pornick.
That was
Kia ora,
some
Ash.
excellent ASMR kind of voice there, Ash. Okay. We have got the Zoomers back on, and I think it's 80% of this podcast is now trans, and they're all looking at me in an accusing manner as I drink can after can of Monster Energy, and my big baggy jumper hides the ever-growing giant rat that I now own.
The white Monster Energy.
Not just Monster, but white Monster
right now.
That's got to be the white monster.
It's still gross. It's still
Okay.
disgusting.
Oh my god, a lot of stuff has happened since our last podcast, and almost none of it's good. We talked last time about the Zoomer experience during COVID, and COVID's got a lot worse in New Zealand. So yay for all of us. There's been a lot of talk about what schools have been doing. I know that Ross was on the 1 of 200 podcast recently with another teacher, both of them tearing their hair out at the fact the Ministry of Education and the government seem to have very little idea about exactly what's going on in schools. And we thought we'd get our Zoomer correspondents from Poneki, Ototahi, and Tamaki Makaurau to tell us what it's like. So guys, I hear shit's fucked up.
Yeah, the thing about being a student right now is that it's not good. Hot take, it's bad.
Yeah, that's a little bit of an understatement. It is truly nightmarish.
There is really, I
It's
think.
a shame we're doing this on... Sorry.
There really is, I think, a sense of a desire to return to the normal state of things, despite the fact that all of us can very clearly see things are obviously a lot worse. I think all of the teachers, the staff are trying their very best to try and maintain this facade of everything's fine, everything's all right, to try and not get the students to freak out about it. I think one of the things that's up with that though is that we're going to find out anyway. If one of our classmates or close friends test positive, we're all going to talk about it anyway, and it's somehow even worse that we're all trying to go about our daily lives as more and more of our peers test positive for COVID, and it kind of it feels like it's closing in, and yet no one really seems to acknowledge it, and it's a little frustrating, not gonna lie to you. But yeah, I guess it sure is going. It sure is.
And I think one of the strangest things is now the fact that, I don't even, maybe Ross, you have answers as to why this is the way it is, but the fact that schools don't actually have to report COVID cases to the community, they're not obliged to tell us about that anymore. My school still does. They do weekly updates, which shame we're doing this on Thursday, because then I could tell you how many cases there are in my school. But last Friday it was 58, so I can only imagine. But yeah, did you know why that is? Why they've decided they don't have to keep us informed anymore?
It's so the reasons that they'll be giving are things like it's confidentiality, and we don't want people could be identifiable. But it does seem to be, and one of the things that I talked about on 1 of 200 with a teacher who was also based out in Poneki is it's just it feels like the Ministry of Education has just kind of washed their hands of it, along with the government's sort of move from elimination to vibes.
It's not even suppression anymore; it's just vibes.
Yeah, it's really just it's astonishing how quickly we changed tack, and it's the fact that schools have not been a lot. Credit to a lot of the principals and a lot of teachers out there. I think most, as you said, Artie, a lot of them really trying their best to keep things going and do the best they can. But there's no training for this. There's nothing in the training for being a teacher or for being a principal or for being on a board of trustees that says, here's how you manage a pandemic. You know,
It is.
we are.
I think it's interesting compared to the last time we did this. Last time we did this, myself, Ross, and Artie were all up, and we were all locked down in Auckland, and had been for ages. And Ash and Augs, you were kind of in level 3. I think you were kind of not quite as.
I think it was level
Yeah, it was level
2
2,
or
3.
Yeah. So you. Yeah. So we had all the COVID, and we weren't sharing it with anybody because we didn't want to. Whereas now it seems like all of your situations are exactly the same, as in COVID is in your schools, it's taking out your teachers, it's taking out your friends, and all that you get from the school is, well, good luck.
Damn, that's crazy. Sorry to hear about that. Guess you gotta keep coming in tomorrow.
There's absolutely no way we could have avoided this. Not at all.
Yeah, and yeah, I only have sympathy for my teachers and like the staff, because you know, they're basically like, it's not their fault that things got to be run the way they are. Like, they're going through it as well, and most of them have like, you know, young kids. So like, we have like the amount of teachers that are off just because like, so like they have to look after their kids if they get sick, not even just COVID, but just, you know, if they get anything. And it's just, it's a bad time. And yeah, I know most of the cases in my school so far, they're in the senior school, and there's not a lot of like transmission within the school, but it's because like most of the senior students like have jobs. And so there's also that whole other thing of like, you know, go to school. There's like so many people I know getting COVID, and then I have to go to work. And because I work at a supermarket that's under like the critical worker exemption scheme, like I'm working with people whose like entire families have COVID, and it's just like, oh, this is fine. I gotta just go back to school tomorrow. Fine, normal, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking as a teacher working in a school where, you know, obviously it's about it
wonder
is
why.
as not fun for your teachers as it is for you guys. And we also have our job, our duty of care. You know, we're legally in loco parentis. We have to make decisions to keep our kids safe that parents would. And yet, you know, all we've got is you're allowed to keep the windows open
My English
and
teacher
sliding
is,
door open.
yeah.
And everyone has to sanitize their hand and wear a mask inside.
Yeah.
And in a way that I think that has reduced transmission a bit within our thing, but it is also, schools aren't just these sealed bubbles. You know, if it's out in the community, then it's going to jump from family to family out there
100%.
and take out kids and families, and just you
Yeah,
just find your time going, how many kids, how many are we going to have today? You know, how many people are going to come in? Because it has just been, you just watch the dominoes fall.
Oh yeah,
over.
I walk into my first
And
class this morning. There's
eventually
like
you
under
know-
half of the normal student population like sitting there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, and it's kind of, it's like being in a horror movie and like the killer is coming.
and it's like what
And
Artie
you're just
said, how
like,
the
I can see
teachers are
it.
like pretending it's
Yeah,
all
it's
real
over there.
normal. Like my teacher's like, oh, that's funny. I haven't got many people
So
in
many-
today, and it's like, yeah, funny that miss. There's this thing about at the moment.
So many people in my classes are isolating or just not here. And the teachers are still going on about how, oh, I'm sure pretty soon we'll be out of it. We won't have to wear our masks anymore. And it sucks.
Yeah, you got to wonder like how much they're saying
Not
just
to
to
mention,
make us
there's at
feel better.
least, just from what I've gathered through my sources, there's at least one school just in the Wellington city area that is closed because they can't have the students at school because they don't have enough teachers.
Yeah.
Like there
And
is this
this
sort
is-
of like the narrative of inevitability that's kind of like permeated through, say, the media, of like official sort of sources of information, like everyone will kind of get it, and that's sort of been reinforced in a really like an odd way. I remember the principal at our very first prefect meeting before school even started in week 0. He said to us, "All of you in this room are going to get COVID this year." I just thought, like, damn. Like, even,
Yes.
I don't know, like the acceptance of COVID as a thing that is here to, like, that will get all of us, like that attitude towards it has been quite, like, concerning as a student, even if it is, like, true. It sort of, I don't know, like my English teacher was telling us as a means of reassurance that her entire family in Britain had got it, and I was like, that's not really reassuring to us.
Yeah, because it comes
Not
with the
reassuring, that's
assumption also that,
terrifying.
you know, it's like all of you are going to get it, but you're young, so you'll be fine. Just, you know, completely ignoring like anyone who's less
It's-
likely to be fine if
yeah,
they get it, and
anyone's-
anyone that has family
Anyone
members
who's
that won't
disabled,
be fine if they get it.
immunocompromised.
It's like,
And like, yeah,
What are you
the younger
saying?
kids are only just now getting their second vaccine. My sister's going to get hers tomorrow. So it is really like kind of like it's worrying. Like you don't just worry about yourself, you worry about like your
And-
community, your family, like the people who you live with, like the people who you interact with on a daily basis, who are all still expected to say go to school, even with medical conditions. So yeah, that is a big drag on the
Young ones are only just getting their
situation.
second vaccine. People over 12 can't get the booster shot, and all the messaging has just been like, the booster, get it because it's the thing that will keep you safe because we won't anymore.
There's a
And it's just a big fuck you to the students who can't and are at extremely high risk.
Ashley, I think you make a really good point there as well. There seems to be this again. It's that there's this assumption that under 18s either don't read or don't pay attention to anything. So it's like the booster is the most effective way of dealing with Omicron. If you're under 18, you can forget it. But this is the most effective thing. Also, we're going to put you in these.
Like it's
Yeah.
every time I would log on to Instagram for a solid month, I would just look through stories, and all I would get is ad after ad after ad from the Ministry of Health saying you are not safe unless you are boosted.
and like I go to
And
work, we have the radio
Jesus
on all the time. You
Christ.
get like the COVID ads like every like 5 minutes, honestly, and it's like, get your booster. It's like, damn, would love to, so that there's something I can do while I'm busy, having to just live my life like everything's cool and normal. But
Entering
Okay.
the cool
Yeah,
and normal
it's-
zone.
oh, we are well and truly in
Yeah,
the cool zone.
So cool and extremely normal.
It's really it almost feels like a form of psychological warfare. Like you are being subjected to all of this it's advertising about the importance of the booster. You're not allowed to get the booster. You're being put into situations, and again, another really good point that you've made is around people seem to think that school-aged people go to school and then they go home, and there's very little understanding of school-aged people are working people. School-age people are in the community, like being people, and it's that weird sort of
Going to
yeah
fast food restaurants or going to the park.
Yeah, all those
or
we're busy supporting local
I'd say the
businesses
library,
like you
but
want
nobody
us to
goes to
so
the
badly.
Yeah.
buy your lattes,
local
but also don't,
businesses
because
and-
you won't be able to afford a house if you do. Yeah, and I think it's that, like I say, it feels very from the outsider perspective, it feels deeply sort of psychologically damaging. I can only imagine what it's like to actually experience it firsthand.
Yeah, consider me
I mean, it's
damaged.
so deeply normalized that we don't even consciously think about it anymore. Like, we just kind of go about our everyday lives recognizing that, in a way, we're like, we and the people around us are like the trade-offs that are made in order to, I don't know, to achieve whatever end this is supposed to like achieve. And
Well,
so
line go up,
it's
you see,
become
Artie.
just
Line
like,
go up.
yeah.
Mm.
And so I feel like
Yeah.
it's that devaluing of the experience and of the safety of us and the people around us that is just kind of like embedded in the way all of us now look at like the COVID response, the actions that we have to take. And it's kind of dangerous too, because then here's like people my age who get that in their head, like, oh, like surely if we don't need a booster, we'll be fine. That means we're like more immune, or like we're not going to get as sick, right? And so then that motivates people to continue just living life as normal, because if everyone else is trying to pretend so hard to live life as normal, a lot of people are going to follow suit. And so that's pretty dangerous, obviously, for those of us who have medically vulnerable family members or are medically vulnerable ourselves. And so, yeah.
And that's not even to mention like people our age who are, anti-vax or anti-mask, or that, have those beliefs pushed on them by their family, because there's people that, think that themselves, and then there's people who just, have a mask exemption because mask requirements get put in place, and their mum goes, oh, we don't want you, you don't need to be doing that, you'll be fine. And so they get whatever mask exemption they get, and it's...
I know a person from one of my classes who cannot get vaccinated because their parents will not let
Yeah,
them.
yeah, we all know people like that.
He wants to, but he can't because his parents would do bad things. I don't know the full extent of it, but just he
Yeah,
can't.
I've had people like that I work with have to leave because of like similar things, and yeah, people that like I know and like I'm like close with, and they're like good and nice people, and it's just so weird to sit in class with them. Like, no, sorry, lost my train of thought slightly, but yeah, it's just it's really weird.
There is a certain thing about this drive for normality. Is they did it in the States, and they're like, oh, we're opened up and we're back. And what was it? I think Ross was putting something on earlier today, which was like more kids have died in America from the virus in the last few months than throughout the whole pandemic. And it's not so much it's the state essentially saying, no, we're done doing anything now because we can't stop this, and anything we would do is pointless, and lots of people are angry at us, and it's just not popular anymore. So you find yourself in a situation where the virus isn't going to go away. When the border reopens and vaccinated people can come in, and normal tourism and stuff, the virus is still going to be here. It's just that all of the protections and stuff that were put in place are just slowly going to be withdrawn. And sometimes it just feels it's like they just can't be bothered with it anymore. They're just like, it'll be fine.
Absolutely
So we had all of
can't.
this, we had this like year or so, 18 months of everyone being in the same boat and getting on with it and doing what they can to stamp it out and following all the rules and idolizing Ashley Bloomfield and all of that. And now we're into this kind of state where, or this position where the virus is still going to be here, but everyone's tired of it. So as long as it doesn't affect them personally, they don't give a shit. So they just want everything to go back to normal. And that only lasts right up until the point that someone they know gets it and dies, or their local shop is closed because everyone's off sick, and then they start to complain about that as well.
Yeah,
and you just go, well, you wanted normality, but you didn't want to actually get rid of the virus or deal with that sort of thing. You didn't want to protect people. So why the fuck are you complaining that like the virus isn't going away? We can get rid of the mandates. We can stop the vaccination requirements. We can stop scanning in, and we can stop wearing masks. And you know what's going to happen? People are still going to get sick. People are going to get sick probably in bigger numbers than they are right now. And that is what is going to happen. And people are going to go, oh, well, I didn't want this. And it's like, then what the fuck did you expect?
Surprise Pikachu face.
Yeah. Ashley?
So just on what John was saying, I was out shopping and like walking around my local shopping area, and I was passing by like a Subway restaurant, and I was like, oh, that could be nice. And it was closed because they had no staff that they could staff it with. And that's protecting the economy.
Well, we all know it's actually Wellingtonians' fault for going into their little mini baby lockdowns, as we all saw in the Herald or whatever it was this morning. just stop staying inside, guys. We don't.
Our
why
baby
when you need the
lockdowns that
restrictions?
nobody is actually in.
I mean, I haven't really gone anywhere except work or school since like the term started. To
It
be
does
honest,
feel
but-
like an extension of the snowflake Zoomers these days, too concerned about their pronouns and their pronouns and their immune systems to want to catch a potentially fatal illness. This is why the West is decadent and weak, and why Putin would flatten us in minutes if he chose to. My piece for the Herald, paywalled.
Do I have to get the Putin spray
Well,
bottle
like
out?
pronouns, we all know cis people actually don't have immune systems.
It's just so fucking weird, man. Like watching this happen, and also there's the longer effects. Like we don't really have. There's a couple of articles come out about long COVID, like a couple in New Zealand, but you see the ones that have come out from other places, and you hear the stories. And effectively, what we're going to end up doing is ending up with a lot more people who are disabled in this country, and I don't think it's any surprise.
People that the government is known to care deeply about.
That's what I was about to say. It's like I think everyone on this podcast knows that our government cares deeply about disabled people, which is why they effectively imprison them and then mostly abuse them in many cases. So it's this, there's going to be a shitload more disabled people in the future, and we're kind of in a situation where they're absolutely not going to be able to deal with that at all. And it's going to be dismissed in the same kind of, oh, what's the matter, got long COVID, oh, that's a shame,
You're
that's why you
trying
can't
to
afford a
see pants.
house.
Woo.
Yeah.
Like,
Just on that whole mini lockdown thing, I've been trying to avoid the central city as much as possible, but in the times where I have to go catch a train to see my grandparents, that is not happening. People are not avoiding the central city.
I mean, it's still the central
They-
city. People
oh my
still
God,
have
they
to
should be, but
have to
they
work
aren't.
there and go places and do all their things because apparently that's just what we're doing.
To work there, and it's impossible to get anywhere without going through the central city.
There's one thing that I've been sort of sitting with recently. I'd love to hear your takes on it. Is that we're sort of in this weird phase where life is never going to go back to the way it was. Like for all the columnists and a couple of politicians would like to believe, like 2019 is never coming back, just as 2015 is never coming back. Like we are way past the event horizon on this, and there's a lot.
I was 10 years old in
There
2015.
you go. That there's a lot of people still seem to be clinging to this idea that if we all just wish hard enough and write enough columns about it, like everything will be fine. And I sort of feel that this is like a continuation of what we were talking about before, about that loss of hope for a younger generation. Like this just feels like it's accelerated that process. And it's like, what does it feel like for you? Does it ever feel like,
I mean,
does it feel like this is sort of the setting the stage for the future, or what does that
I mean,
feel like
I
for
kind of
you?
look back on our last Zoom and I'm like, damn, remember when we thought things were bad? That's funny.
More innocent time.
Are we
Yeah.
switching this from the Zoomacast to the Doomacast? Is that where we're going?
Yeah, why not both?
That's right.
I don't want to go back to, I mean, like, obviously, it would be nice to go back to a pre-COVID world, but like, that's not possible. That's not what I want. I want us to go back to December 2020 when there wasn't COVID because
We
we had
did things
adequate
about
border
it.
protection measures. We should have expanded MIQ instead of, what are we doing? Taking it from 30 hotels to 4.
Remember when our COVID response was hard?
Mm.
Remember when we had one?
Yeah. I mean, like, for a lot of young people, like, and I include myself in this to an extent, like, for example, my sister, she's 11. A lot of us don't really remember in great detail, like, a time before COVID.
Hmm.
Like, in that, we're all, like, obviously, like, maturing, like, going through, like,
Transitioning.
school. Like, I'm in year 13 now, for example. Transitioning. But yeah, all of these things are happening, and yet it seems like it's always been here because it feels so inevitable.
Mm.
And it's just kind of like, like sad to know that like lots and lots of people are getting all of like this messaging about like the fact that the value of their lives and the value of their families' lives is no longer as important as, keeping a couple businesses in the Wellington CBD running, for example. And so it's like, it's grim,
Yeah.
And even as much as I would like to, go back to December 2020 when it felt okay, I think it's also important to note that it is a global pandemic. I've had 2 grandparents die in the course of this pandemic, and I have not been able to go and visit them. None of my family has. They were in hospital alone. And because of this pandemic, and because the health system was so overrun that eventually those lower priority things got pushed back, that there was no ability for them to be pushed back any further. And so I think, it's just like a whole, if we could have no COVID, that would be great. But at the same time, I think it's really easy to like get caught up in like what we would do if we had no COVID, that we kind of just have to like go, okay, well, if we're just going to go full Blackfield with this, I'm not sure that it's like healthy for us to be thinking about all the time, especially as young people, where we don't really remember like a time before that. It's really easy to like idealize the time before, because we don't really remember it. And we all know that like the times before, like all of the inequalities were there, all of the people like who were at a disadvantage, who were actively being hurt by these systems who have now revealed all of their cracks very publicly, like all of that was still there. And so I think like we just have to like move forward with things, you know? We have to like reflect on the past, both before COVID and through the course of the pandemic. And we just have to think, well, where do we go from here?
Yeah, on that, I will admit that I do have the privilege that every relative that I know lives in not just the country, but the Wellington area. Like my grandparents live in the Porirua area and my cousins live in Lower Hutt.
I haven't seen my grandparents in 8 years.
So sorry.
It's rough, eh? Like we've been talking about getting our grandparent getting the like posting lads grandparents over as soon as possible, because the last time they saw him he was 2 and he's gonna be probably 5.5 by the time they see him again, and that's like over half a lifetime, you know. And for them it's a long time, and for him it's a long time. We're lucky we can do things like this, and he sees them on video chats and gets to know who they are, but you know it doesn't
It's not
beat
the same
that
as a hug,
time, does it? And it's something that has been taken. No, it's something that's been taken away from us, and something that we're going to have to deal with at some point. But just saying, oh well, it's all back to normal now, you just got to get over it, is a dangerous way of doing things, because resentment, you know, a feeling of injustice, is a perfectly rational response to having, say, 3 years of your life turned completely to shit through. And it's this: nobody's done anything wrong. None of us are to blame for the novel coronavirus, and yet it kind of, you know, it starts to feel a bit personal, you know. And for some people that drives them into the conspiracy kind of, you know, this is insane, because they just can't accept that sometimes huge global events can completely fuck your life.
I mean, on that, I kind of, a few weeks ago, I was at work and it kind of just, it all of a sudden just kind of hit me. I was like, Jesus, it would be so easy to just be like, what the hell? They're making this up. This can't be real. Like, I don't know if I was just in like a weird headspace or whatever, but I suddenly kind of, I got it a bit more than I think I ever really had. Like, just how much easier it would be to just not be worried about it, because you're just like, nah, this just can't be happening. Like, and yeah, I did have my hand up because I was just, I don't know if like the other Zoomers on the cast feel this way, but like the only way I can kind of rationalize it to myself is just that, you know, this pandemic is just kind of another, like, it's part of growing up, right? Like I was 15 when this started. Like I've never known like having a job, for example, that isn't like in the cool zone. Like I just like just kind of moving from like year 11 through to year 13, and like then I'll leave school, and that's just like, it's just part of how my life has changed, as well as all the other ways my life has changed. I guess that's the only way to really make sense of it, is just be like, you know, this is I'm getting older and this is another thing that's happening. Whereas I guess you don't really have that when you're already an adult who's experienced like normal adult life things, and like now you're experiencing a new mode of adult life things.
My experience at my old school was like terrible, and it was awful. And so when I moved to my new school, I thought on my first few months, this is amazing. This is so much better. And then suddenly, boom, COVID.
Oh,
I remember
okay.
exactly where I was. I was in English class, and then we got the message, everybody go home. And so everybody stood up and left. And so I was
I
just
remember that too,
walking down from my school to the bus stop and thinking, Jesus Christ, this is real. And then it just is.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the kind of the strength of the memories, it's like that, and then like March 15th are like two just the most like vivid, like where I was type memories of school that I probably will
everyone
ever have.
has that. It's a very weird thing that I could probably draw. The millennial comparison is every millennial knows where they were on 9/11.
Yeah, fully.
Everyone remembers exactly what they were doing, because that's a point when the world completely changed around you, and you're like, holy shit, like everything that was before just doesn't exist in the same way anymore, and everything is now viewed through this singular lens of this incident.
Yeah.
And it turns out the millennial one,
Among
the
other
Zoomer one,
things.
is COVID, I guess.
Yeah. And then you got the other one if you're in Christchurch, but yeah.
Yeah, that one too. Hey.
Yeah.
But the other two, if you're in Christchurch.
Yeah.
True. I wasn't there
Oh,
for
yeah,
that
that's
one,
true.
but you do have.
Yeah,
that if you've
I
lived
think
here
you've touched
long
on something
enough.
really important, and again, it's something that I think is being missed from this discussion is, and one thing that I wanted to ask you about is, we've already talked in the past around the sort of chilling effect on sort of ambition and opportunity that the inequity that we've seen so far has on you. What's that like? You know, you've all been going through, the pandemic has been in lockstep almost with your sort of senior high school education. Like, what does that do to you in terms of like plans for the future? What do you know, how seriously you're taking exams? You know, what's the, because it, from an external view, it feels like that would make being able to focus on that extremely difficult, and something that already, I think, had less value than it might have done previously. Like, how does that feel for you?
I mean, like, should like preface this by saying we all do go to pretty nice schools and fairly nice areas, so there's definitely not the kind of inequity that just exists anyway, even outside a pandemic for us. But I know for me, like, I never like really seriously considered leaving school before finishing year 13 before this, but I'm like now I just think like, oh, if something happens, like to mess it up enough, like, you know, just I'm out of here. Like, I could, if I'm gonna get COVID, I might as well be working full time and making money while I'm doing it, rather than being at school.
Yeah.
Like, it can just be really hard to kind of get your head around the fact that you just have to keep going to school and doing the same work and the same curriculum that you'd have to do in like in a normal time, and like, you know, within all the same time frames, meeting all the same criteria, when like literally like every day I'm hearing about like people that I know and like that I sit close to, that I have classes with, that have got COVID. It's really weird.
Even back during like the early lockdown, none of my plans for my life changed, because I thought, not like post the first lockdown, none of my plans for my life changed, because I thought, even if the rest of the world is like not responding appropriately, at least I'll be safe so long as I'm here. And now that's all gone, and I just had to listen to lecture after lecture from a teacher saying that we just have to learn to live with it, because that's what everybody else has chosen.
I mean, like, for me, I mean, for all of us, really, like, we don't have anything to compare it to. We haven't been through high school before. We haven't, like, had to stop and consider what our future plans might be. Certainly, I think COVID has been less of an impact than realizing and coming out and going, wow, I need to transition when I leave home. I need to do that when I graduate and I go to university, and now suddenly I have to think about all of these things, like my personal safety and my proximity to home, and my like the healthcare situation and the various DHBs, or overseas if there's no medical insurance for people who are on just a student visa. And there's all of these different things that I feel like COVID's just another factor, you know? That there are so many different things like at play, and that to all of us, I think, as students, it just seems sort of normal that we accept that COVID's just a part of our lives, and that we kind of like have to move on with it, because that's the way it's been sold to us by, you know, our teachers, by the news, by the Ministry of Health. But yeah.
Again, I think you've made another very good point, all of you, around the messaging that's coming out is not congruent with what we're seeing. You know, we've had, you know, tens of thousands of new cases every day. The hospitals are, the number of people hospitalized is huge. And as you said, you're getting these nice graphics where it's like, you're all good, bro. And it's like, who is good?
I've had to just straight up block the Unite Against COVID-19 Instagram account because everything on it is them telling you, get over it. It's fine.
Did you see that graphic
Screw
where it's
you.
like the
And
what
just-
to do if this and this, and then if none of them, it's like,
Are
you're all good,
we?
bro.
You're
Yeah,
all
well,
good,
you know
mate.
what?
That's shit. Yeah, that was just a screw you.
I don't know about that one, eh? Yeah, I don't know if it's all good, bro.
Nothing more terrifying than the phrase international border update, locations of interest update,
Oh, you
Omicron
love an
response
update.
update.
You love an update.
Why is there a picture of a cat? I love an update that tells me I'm
No,
gonna die.
it's the update that tells you you're all good, bro, because it's fine and cool and normal and good.
And this is it. I don't think we don't hear a critique of the COVID response, such as the ones that you guys have been talking about today, which involves saying, "Yo, what the fuck, man? This is messed up." You get the anti-vax point of view, which is the this is all Bill Gates and the lizard people and all of that sort of thing. You get the pro-business one, which is we need to stop all this nonsense because Coffee Club is going to go out of business. And you kind of there isn't a mainstream voice saying it's really tough out there. Our schools are absolutely getting slammed. Like businesses are closing down. Businesses are having to shut because they just can't get the staff.
Yeah.
Hospitals are, what was it, Mark Dolder at Newsrooms found out there were just 4 free ICU beds on Tuesday. And a lot of those ICU beds are not filled with COVID patients. They're just filled with the normal kind of patients you get in ICU, which was always going to be the case.
Like normal life is still happening, and therefore people are still, going about all the normal risk. Like, I don't know, you get in a car crash, you get some bad injury or something. Like ICU beds aren't, and like hospital beds aren't just for COVID. And I should add, like, we're not some kind of magical special woke lefty Zoomers. Like, this is like pretty. It's basically the majority opinion of like everybody that you talk to about COVID, because that's like most of what the small talk is about. Like, it's not like every other Zoomer, aside from like a small section of the woke left Zoomers, like think that everything is actually just fine and normal and cool. Like, none of us are really thinking this is fine and normal and cool.
I
I genuinely don't think the government or the people in charge here see. I'm going to use the word backlash, but I don't mean it in a people camping outside Parliament way, but I mean in a people just going, you just basically let this happen to us kind of backlash from people who did everything right when they were told to, who stayed the course, made sacrifices, as we've talked about, and yet feel that now they're just like, oh, well, better get sick quickly and get over it because, we've got the GDP to manage and there's all this other stuff we have to do and the tourists are coming back. And I think that's gonna breed a resentment, which is going to be a different kind of resentment to the kind of anti-vax conspiracy far right one, but it's going to exist and it might be exploitable. And there's an election next year, or there are consequences.
We are not immune to
here.
propaganda.
Yeah, there are consequences here that will not be foreseen, where the government say, well, we're not going to do any of the rules and stuff anymore, and people are still going to get sick, and then they're going to go then.
Nothing terrifies me more than the fact that there's an election next year, because I hate Labour because they failed us, they failed everyone. But the only thing that I hate more than them, and that scares me more than their response, is the idea of National being in charge of this.
Running the country?
Because if they were, I genuinely believe so many of us would be dead right now.
That's just true based on, literally all of their statements going, hey, here's what we would have done. Like, you can model that. You can do data science with that. That's not some magical, oh, you can't say that would have happened. You don't know. It's like, no, people can do modeling on that. You can get a good idea of what in fact would have happened if we had or hadn't done certain things at certain points.
Yeah, and it's not like there aren't plenty of like actually existing examples of governments who did the things that the National were calling for, and the results that then happened. Like, for instance, Turf Island,
sure, is a
which
normal
just
and
decided
cool
to kill about
island.
180,000 people just because they couldn't be bothered. There is I mean, I'm not sure how much time we got here, because I know Artie, you're going to be like logging off, which is good advice for everyone, isn't it? Really.
It truly is. Like the time that I deactivated main was genuinely like the happiest I've ever felt. Like just because the nature of the platform. I'm sorry. Like, is this off topic for this
No,
podcast?
it's fine.
But like,
It's the
I would
posting
just
cast,
really,
Ross.
really like. It's the posting cast. We do the posting. I would like really strongly encourage like anyone, not just people with like a big platform, but especially those who have like a number of like reply guys or whatever, to just like take a step back and like examine your relationship with social media, because it's so easy to get like sucked into it, especially in periods of isolation, like in lockdown, where your only sort of like social connection to other real people is through something like Twitter or something that's like anonymous. And like I just found for myself that kind of reflection was especially important, especially as I sort of examined the manner in which I allowed like my boundaries to be crossed and needing to redraw new ones. Ross, I saw your article in like the spin-off, like about like the one that you were on about parasocial relationships. I was like, damn, there is like there is a certain sort of tendency towards that kind of behavior, I think, on like anonymous apps such as that, in which people are so like idolized when like that, like in like these spectators who you don't know who they are, and they don't really know who you are except for the image that you sort of broadcast to such a wide range of people. And it sort of like made me have to reevaluate like the sort of things I share, like not wanting to become like too personal, because then I'm sharing all of like this information which I would happily have like shared to friends or whatever, but now that there's so many people, I would not want them to like believe that there's like a genuine like friendship or relationship there, which like is completely one-sided. Like I feel like that isn't that healthy, and like yeah, it's just a lot to think about, and it's a lot of responsibility to bear, as you know, just
I think it's
some young
such
person online.
it's such a pervasive thing, because we are let into other people's lives and we're given what we think is enough for a whole picture, and it's absolutely not the case. Like I'm not cool on social media. I'm even less cool in real life. But I think it is very dangerous. It is very pervasive, and it's something that people have always done, but you can, there's
Yeah.
less space between the individuals involved, and I think that can be very dangerous. I was going to say, I sort of feel like the COVID chat has taken up the bulk of it, and I sort of feel like that's a good sort of topic to keep it to. I don't know, like
Yep. I just wanted to
it's a
like
good point,
add that.
but I feel like
yeah.
I don't know, I feel like this is a really important conversation. Like it's because you're the group that this is affecting the most, I think, and it's a group that's not being
No, that's fair.
heard. So yeah, any
But
One way to go about it, I guess.
Guess just like
I think it would be really good to consider, I think, the youth perspective, in that like this podcast is really great and I appreciate it a lot. But I think even in official messaging, I think it's really important to engage with the youth, because overall we do feel like we have been left out. And I feel like a more holistic approach, especially to like dealing with the reality that we have now, because I guess there's sort of no going back to the before times of really like giving all-round support to students, because we really have very little guidance. We're like, just as lost as perhaps like
as anyone really.
anyone else's, really, except doubly so, because it is a crucial time in our lives when we're trying to like find ourselves and like trying to find our place in the world. And so I would really appreciate if more engagement was like really specifically targeted towards like the youth demographic.
I actually have one more question, which is like we've talked about how the last 3 years have been very hard and very bad, but obviously all three of you as Zoomers have I'm going to try and phrase this in a delicate and nice manner. You guys have found some trans joy in the last few years?
They put the chemicals in the
Yeah.
water and they
So-
turned the freaking kids trans, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Did
Like
that.
all of the kids are being
I mean-
all the kids are being trans, but you all appear to have found some like genuine like joy from that, and I think it would be nice just to hear a little
mean,
bit about
just-
something. How has that been?
Do I have this muted?
No, you're good.
No,
Are you gonna do
I
like the
can hear you.
teacher thing of like what's something nice that's happened? You know.
Yes, because like
I mean, I
two or
just gonna say on a personal.
2 or 3 podcasts in a row, we
Uh,
have finished with all of us being like, "So, thank you very much. We're off to put ourselves to bed with a shotgun." So, I'm looking for something a little bit nicer.
Yeah.
On a
I think-
personal level, I would never want to go back to 2019 in my life because that was definitively the worst year I've had ever.
I think one of the interesting side effects of the lockdown itself is that it's very physically removed ourselves from people at school that we would not feel safe around, and thus it's made us, well, for me at least, feel more comfortable like exploring my identity, like really thinking of these things without being automatically assumed as something. In that I felt I was more able to take control over like my own autonomy of my identity, in that I was able to actually dictate what I wanted to be as an individual and not have that spelled out for me. Because I think one of the benefits, at least, of say being online is that whenever someone says something gross, you can block them, mute them, report them, and then they're gone from your life. But as I was saying on Twitter recently, going back to school, having to confront the realities of people who you kind of have to put up with. They're in your committee, in your friend groups, in your classes, and it's actually quite difficult. So in a way, the social isolation has like driven a lot of people online. I think there's definitely something to be said about finding community that you might not otherwise through non-conventional means that like are more normalized as a result of the pandemic. So that has been one plus.
Yeah, because like I have found more people that are more accepting of me and my interests online. I'm stumbling over my words. People always say, or like older people always say, don't trust people you meet online. But the people I've met online have been more kind towards me, my identity, and my interests than anybody I've ever known offline. And of course, it's disappointing to like not be able to do the real life things like, I don't know, destroying a trash can.
Hey, we hung out that
But,
one
like-
time. That's cool.
We did do that, but I wanted to get drunk and then throw beer cans at the Christchurch Cathedral. I'm only half joking about that.
Trans joy, you were getting there.
Like, yeah, I I wouldn't give up the friends I've made over this lockdown for anything.
And it has brought us together in a way as well.
It has, yeah.
We wouldn't be here, I think, maybe,
How about you, August?
without that.
Well, I spent this whole time trying to think of like something like trans and joyful. I mean, the thing is, I did like most of my kind of figuring stuff out, and then like social transition and stuff like quite a while before COVID. So my kind of experience of the intersection of the pandemic and transitioning has basically just been getting screwed over and over and over by the health system. That's basically.
I trust a DHB with C at the beginning of its name.
Don't trust any of them. They're all they don't.
Don't
They're
trust any
not.
DHB, but especially screw you, Christchurch DHB and Capital and Coast DHB.
Yeah, very much something to be said for the fact that there's just no elective surgeries happening under the Canterbury DHB. Like just none. They just can't do them. Like any of them. That's really cool and normal. Like I'm hopefully, fingers crossed, getting top surgery in 7 weeks from today, and I like terrified to even talk about that or say anything about it because there's just that ever looming just what if something happens.
Let's take a moment of celebration.
Everyone light the prayer candle circles. We are making this
I
happen.
think-
Yeah, like it's hard to get
This is the
excited
closest
about
thing
it
I
when you're
have
just
to-
constantly like, damn, there's so much going on that it just, and like when you already have the experience of like bad things happening with the health system and it being a bad time. You know, like it's hard to even believe that it's gonna go well and like things are gonna turn out good and fine and normal. But I keep saying but because I keep trying to like make it turn it into like a good and nice thing to end on. Maybe I need to hand that task over to someone else.
But that's the reality of it, you know. And it's I think we could talk longer about the effects that the lockdown and COVID has had on healthcare like that, because it does feel like a real issue. But yeah, thank you so much for your time this evening. It's always, you know, it's always a pleasure to hear from you and to hear your perspectives. It's been great as ever, and hopefully we can get you on again at some point in the future to do another State of the Nation. So yeah, take care.
Yeah, another what, 6 months?
State of the
In at least, let's see, in at least 10
continue.
to 12 weeks, because obviously August is going to be busy in 7 weeks, and those first 2 weeks after surgery, I seem to recall, are a little bit, you know, you don't want to be doing a podcast.
When I like know how to be a person again, but you know, I'll have all that time off school. I'll be pretty bored. So,
all right, folks.
It's prime posting hours.
Oh yeah, I will be posting so much.
Morphine posting. We love to see it. All right, folks. Thank you so much for your time this evening, and yeah, take care, everyone.
Au revoir.
Thank you very much for having us. Bye.